Okay, so we are ready to start the new Masechta, which is we're going to do the tractate Beitzah. Now, we're going to learn all about the laws of Yontif. That's the tractate Beitzah, learned the Yontif. We're going a little bit in a backwards order. We finished the tractate Moyed Cotton. Moyed Cotton means the small holiday, and that is Choil HaMoyed, the weekday of the Moyed. That's called the Moyed Cotton. And now we're doing about the Moyed Godel, about the big Moyed. Of course, another way of calling it, some people do call it, they call this not Mesechtes Beitzah, but they call it Mesechtes Yontif. It's a Yontif Mesechta because what this tractate talks about, it's all about Yontif, about things you could do and can do at Yontif. The very first Mishnah talks about a very specific law about when you have an egg that the chicken lays on Yontiv, the Mishnah is going to say that you're not allowed to use that egg on Yontiv. So that's why this specific halacha is the laws of Beitzah. That's why the tractate is called Beitzah, but it is really Masechta Yontiv. It's really the laws about Yontiv. So we learned first about Moyed Cotton, and we're going back to learn about Yontif. Actually, if you go even back further, you learn about Shabbos. So you have Shabbos, and then you have Yontif, and then you have Chol HaMoed. Those are the in the order, and that is the order. But this is now in this particular case, there's an interesting halacha why we are not permitted to use an egg that the chicken laid on Yontif. Now you have to remember, in the olden days, they didn't go into Costco and get eggs. The people had chickens running around in their backyard. I used to raise chickens, and the question becomes: can I use the egg that the chicken lays on Yontif? And the Mishnah brings a disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel whether the egg that was laid on Yontif can be used on Yontif on that day. People would like a fresh egg. I guess there was no refrigeration or not as we have it today. And you wanted to eat the stuff while it's fresh, so eating a laid egg would probably be a delicacy. But Beis Hillel doesn't allow it. Now we'll see. The Gemara has a whole discussion. This has to do with the fact that, again, it seems a little stretched, but that's the way the halacha works, that one is not allowed to prepare from Shabbos. It's obvious that from Shabbos, you're not allowed to prepare for the weekday. So let's say you want to do something after Shabbos, as you know, you're not allowed to set up your house for after Shabbos, because you can't prepare for the weekday. But it's also true that you can't prepare from Shabbos for Yontiv or from Yontiv from Shabbos. So you can't prepare from one day to the other. So what happens, what the Gemara says, the Gemara concludes, I mean, this is going to be the question here. The Gemara concludes that we're talking about a situation, this Yontiv, this debate, this Mishnah is talking about a situation in where there was a Yontiv, Yontiv was on Sunday. Say Pesach was on Sunday, Shavuos, one of the Yontivs was and why only Sunday? This case is Sunday. Why? Because it turns out that the egg that is laid on Sunday has been prepared from the day before. Any time when there is an egg laid, it means that it's been completed the day before. It just came out today. So it turns out that the egg that came out today was prepared on Shabbos. And you can't have Shabbos prepared for Yom Tov. Even though all this doesn't say in the Mishnah just says an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. We are adding the interpretation that it's talking about that it was a Yom Tov that follows Shabbos, that Yom Tov was on Sunday. And we can't have Shabbos prepare for Yom Tov. Now, most of the time we consider preparing for us doing something to prepare, like it's the human act. Over here, human had nothing to do with it. The chicken, the Eibishter prepared it, right? Hashem, in the chicken, we didn't do anything. So if the person would have, let's say, had to do something to the chicken so that the chicken lays the egg on Sunday, on Yom Tov, then you can say, oh, well, you prepared it on Shabbos. But the person had nothing to do with it. He didn't even know the egg was there. It comes on Yom Tov, he finds an egg. So why is that a problem? But it's still considered Yom Tov preparing for Shabbos, and we can't have Yom Tov prepared for Shabbos. And that's going to be now the discussion about this particular halacha. Let's take it step by step, and we'll go in the Mishnah. Now, as you usually know, in the Gemara we have Beit Shammai. They're always more strict, and they're they always have an argument with Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai means the house, the study hall of Shammai. That's the yeshiva of Shammai, and Beis Hillel is the house of Hillel, and they would always disagree. Beis Shammai is most of the time, Beis Shammai is stringent, and Beis Hillel is lenient. Most halachas. This Mishnah is going to tell you three halachas, three different laws in which it's the reverse. Beis Hillel are the ones that are stringent, and Beis Shammai are the ones that is lenient. That's why the Mishnah will pile up these halachas together here in the Mishnah. So let's look inside, and we'll start. Bezras Hashem Yisbarach, with Hashem's help, we'll start, and Hashem should give us the strength, the wisdom, the koach, the moach to go through the entire tractate. So this is already in our schedule that we've been doing. We went through all of Makkas, we went through all of Megillah, we went through all of Moed Katan, and now we're starting the Masechta Beitzah. Zog the Mishnah, Beitzah shenilda b'Yom Tov. An egg that was born, meaning an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. So Beis Shammai said, Toichal, go ahead, she can be eaten, go ahead and eat it. Beis Hillel Oimrim, but Beis Hillel say, Loi Toichal, you can't eat the egg that the chicken laid on Yom Tov, you can't eat. Now, it's not a prohibition to eat it after Yom Tov. Loi Toichal, Rashi qualifies, and he says,
Didn't he say that?
Yeah.
Didn't he say that Beit Shammai is always more strict?
That's right. Over here, that's why you'll see this is an exception. That's what I said before.
Oh, okay.
And the following three halachas, Beit Shammai will be the one that is lenient, and that's why they're bunched together. You'll see the next halachas don't have necessarily anything to do with Yom Tov over here, but it's just brought down because in these three cases, Beis Shammai are lenient and Beis Hillel are stringent. Beis Hillel, so says the Rashi, Beis Hillel, it means boy bayoim. You can't eat it on that day, on the day of Yom Tov itself. But after Yom Tov, on Monday, Tuesday, whatever, you can eat it. Again, I explained this from the Gemara later on, and from the Bartanura and the Mishnah, that we're talking about a situation where Yom Tov follows the Shabbos. But in the Mishnah so far, you didn't see it. It just says on Yom Tov you can't eat. Why? We'll have to deal in the Gemara. That's where we'll come in the commentary. Then we have another halacha where Beis Shammai is more lenient than Beis Hillel. Now, the Torah says you can't have in your possession on Pesach sa'or. Sa'or is sourdough. That is dough that has become sour, that is used also as a fermenting for other doughs. That's called sa'or. Sa'or is a very strong level of chametz that it's become sour, that it becomes sa'or. Chametz is regular, like bread that has not become sour, like sourdough. Torah talks about both. How much of the sa'or, how much of the keseves is one not allowed to possess on Pesach? So according to Beis Shammai, there's a different shear. Sa'or, which is the more chametz, it's more it is actually used to ferment others. Even a kizayis. Kizayis is the size of an olive. That's a smaller shiur. That is sufficient to not allow you to have it in your possession during Pesach. But if it's the chametz, if it's regular chametz, over there it's b'kikoi seves. The size that you're not allowed to hold on Pesach would be the size of a date. So according to Beis Shammai, there is a smaller, a larger shear, which means if you only have a kazayis of chametz, you're not going to be violating bal yiro, bal yimotza. You need to be the size of a date, which is bigger than a olive. So according to Beis Shammai, chametz, you're not violating the prohibition of not possessing it unless it has as large as a kesebes. But according to Beis Hillel, they say the size is an olive. It's not, which means they're more stringent, because even if it's chametz, meaning whether it's soir chametz, it's all the kizayis. The smaller shear you're not allowed to possess. Let's go over again the Rashi. So b'kizayis. So Rashi is wondering, what does it have to do with the laws of Yom Tov over here with Beitzah? So Rashi says, Mishum Dahani Tlas Mili. These three cases that we're going to be studying. The one was the case of Beitzah that was laid on Yom Tov, and the case of the Sa'ir, and the next case are these three cases, Havi Mikule Beis Shammai Umechumre Beis Hillel Gabe Yom Tov. With regards to Yom Tov, Pesach is Yom Tov too. Those are from those cases that Beis Shammai is lenient and Beis Hillel is stringent with regards. There's other cases, but with regards to Yom Tov, these are the three cases. Tonaluhu Gabi Hadodi. That's why Mishnah bunches them up and learns them together, these three cases. Okay. And the Rashi says, Ubegamore Mefarish Taimayu. The Gemara will explain what is the reasoning for Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. All right. So basically, Beis Shammai says that the Sa'or is a Kazayis, you're not allowed to possess, but Chometz, only a Keseves. Rashi says, but Keseves is a tomorrow, is a date. Well, Beis Hillel say, Zeh whether it is Sa'or, this strong chametz, or regular chametz, bekizayis, you're not allowed to possess as long as there is a kizayis. So he's more stringent than Beis Shammai, which allow up to like a keseves when it comes to chametz. Another halach. Like this, the law is that when you shecht a bird or a untamed animal called a chaya, over there, you have to cover the blood. That's called kisui hadam. There's a mitzvah that you should cover the blood of the shechita with sand. Only applies to a undomesticated animal and birds. So if a person is allowed to shecht on yontiv because person, it's a malachas oichel nefesh, food that is used for a consumption, a work that you do shechting, which is malacha, but it's for the purpose of eating. You want fresh meat and yontiv, or you want fowl, you want chicken, and so you go ahead and you're allowed to shecht it on yontiv. Now the question is how to deal with covering the blood of the shechita on yontiv. Hashoichet chayev ve'oif b'yontiv. One who shechts a undomesticated animal and a bird on yontiv. So Beis Shammai Eimrim, Beis Shammai say Yachpor b'deker v'yichasa. He can even go as far as digging with a shovel to cover. Digging with a shovel might be a malacha. You're digging a groove to get the sand out. Beis Shammai says for the mitzvah of covering, and we'll see in the Gemara more details, for the mitzvah of covering the blood with sand, you can actually go with a shovel, dig into the ground, and get the sand, then you cover it. Yachper v'deker, Rashi says pilo belas, that's called a shovel in las. Beis Hillel says, no, you can't just go and dig. He says, lo yishchak, you should not go and shecht on the account that you're going to go and dig it. Unless you have ready sand from before Yontif, so you're not going to have to dig, so you're not going to be doing a malacha, then you can go ahead and shecht on Yontif. But if you did not have ready made and you have to go and dig, don't do so. You can't do it. That's what Beis Hillel says, that you cannot dig. So again, you see, Beis Hillel is more stringent than Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai allows for the digging with the shovel to cover the blood, and Beis Hillel says no, only if you have ready-made sand that's ready for before Yontif to cover it, then you can do it. However, Moedim, they agree, Beis Hillel will agree, they're telling you not to shecht, but they will agree, she'im shachat, that if he did shecht, sheyachper b'deker v'yichasa, so he should dig with the shovel and cover, even though they advise you not to dig, but not to shecht. Don't shecht because you don't have ready-made sand. But if you did shecht, they agree you should use the shovel and cover. Now, it doesn't make any qualification. Rashi will explain from the Gemara that you can't just really dig like Beis Hillel says, Beis Shammai says you can go ahead and dig. That Beis Hillel only allows if the shovel is already in the ground. You can't push the shovel in the Gemara, a shovel into the ground. If the shovel is in the ground and then you are digging out, that would be okay. We'll see in the Gemara. Let's do Rashi. Umoidim she'im shochat chulu. And they agree. That means that Beis Hillel will agree that if he shechted, that he can go ahead and cover. K'demefarish taima b'Gemara, as the Gemara explains the reasoning. Kisheyesh loy deker knows mib'od yom. He has a shovel that has been stuck in the ground from the daytime. They will allow you to pick it up. So you're still digging, but you have the shovel in there. As the Gemara will give the explained Mishnah. And then the Mishnah adds another thing. She'efer kira muchanu. The ashes of the oven is ready. What is it saying over here? Rashi doesn't explain. She'ever kira muchanu. Rashi, the Gemara boy in my kamar. The Gemara is going to ask, what is he saying over here? The Gemara will explain that if you have in the oven ashes, those ashes are also okay to cover the blood that you shechted with those ashes. But the issue is, are those ashes muktzah or not? So the Mishnah is saying that the ashes of the oven, of the kira, is prepared and you can use it. But we'll wait for the Gemara to get all the details. She'efer kira muchanu. The Gemara boy my kamar. The Gemara asks, what is he saying? Okay. So these are the guys. So first, the Gemara is going to start explaining. It says about not using the egg of a that was laid on Yontif. What's going on over here? Why not? Frag the Gemara, b'may askinon. What are we dealing with? What is the case? What kind of a chicken are we dealing with? So, people would either raise chickens so that they can eat the chicken for eating, or sometimes people would raise the chicken to lay eggs because they want the eggs. So here you're prohibiting this egg that the chicken laid. What kind of a chicken are we talking about? The Gemara is going to analyze and say that you're not allowing, according to Beitzah Hillel, that you're not allowing to eat this. If we're talking about a chicken which is standing and she is for the purpose of eating, in other words, that you're raising them whenever you need to eat, which means you're allowed to take that chicken and shecht it on Yom Tov because it's prepared. That's why the chickens are raised, to take whenever you need a chicken to eat, you go and shecht it. So on Yom Tov, there's no problem of taking a chicken which is ready to be shechted. And now we're talking about the egg of that chicken. The egg of a chicken is really a part of the food. So if you can eat the chicken, why shouldn't you be able to eat also the egg? So if the chicken is standing there to be eaten, that's what is being raised. And that means that it's not muktzah, because if the chickens are there to lay eggs, you don't use those chickens, so you didn't have in mind before Yom Tov to use those chicken, so you can't use those chicken. We understand there's a problem, but if it's talking about Haimedes Lachila, She'eine Muktzah, that it's not Muktzah, so then we don't understand my time de Beis Hillel. What would be the reasoning of Beis Hillel not to allow us to eat the egg? If we could eat the chicken, why shouldn't we be allowed to eat the eggs? Uchla de afrasu. It's a food that has been separated. You know, if you have a piece of food that is ready to be eaten, you can take it. And a piece of it has been separated. So the egg is part of the chicken that you can eat. So why should we not be able to eat the egg? Rashi, uchla de afris. Uchla de afris means it's an oichel shenifrad. It's a food that has been separated. It's a little bit of a unusual language to say afris. So Rashi says v'chaveiroi, the friend. Where do we find another place? Is bin Menochis, is in the Talmud Menochis. Over there, the Gemara says chiburi oichlin Kamandi mefarsi domi. When you have food connected, they're really separate. That's the Gemara uses over there in Menachos. That means that food is not, they still stay separate even while you connect them together. But we're just trying to prove the word mefarsi means they're separate. Over there in the Perek Shchitas Chulin in the Gemara Chulin, so therefore, the Gemara's question is, why should you not allow to eat the egg? If you're allowed to eat the chicken, you're allowed to eat the egg. The egg is a part of the chicken. Elo, but rather...
I have a separate question.
Yes?
Did Rashi have a Gemara with the dafim that we have? I thought that wasn't done till much later, that it was printed, that we have the
Rashi had the same Gemara. There's actually sometimes a little bit different. You'll see when Rashi quotes from the Gemara, like on his commentary, occasionally it'll be a little bit different, but by and large, it's the Gemara. But it could have had it from handwriting or whatever. They had the Talmud, yes. Rashi did.
So, but it was the same daf, like because I mean, he didn't open it up and have Rashi and Tosfot on his page, obviously.
Well, we had to learn. Rashi has a teacher. He's always quotes his teacher, quotes his rabbis.
So, but I thought it was just sort of more of like a scroll that it was. I mean, initially it wasn't when they first put the Gemara together.
There was volumes of Talmud for a long time. We got to look that up. Look it up in the do some homework, and then you'll come back next week and tell us.
Okay.
The Gemara says, "Ella v'tarnegoyles ha'imedus legabav l'beitzah." On the other hand, you'll say that we're talking about a chicken who is there to raise eggs, meaning you're holding the chicken, so you're not allowed to shecht that chicken because it's muktzah. It's not been prepared for the use of yontav, so you're not allowed to take that chicken. So then I don't understand. My time ayu de Beis Shammai muktzah. So what's the reason of Beis Shammai? That is muktzah. That why would Beis Shammai allow you to take the egg from a chicken which has been designated to lay chicken and use muktzah? So you should not be allowed to use it. Muktzah means anything that you designate, that you give up, you put it aside not to use. You can't use it on Yom Tov because you didn't have in mind to use it on Yom Tov. So the Gemara says the chicken, you didn't have in mind to use it. It was put aside. So you're not allowed to use the egg that it lays either. So why would Beit Shammai say that you can use it? It's muktzah. So the Gemara doesn't understand why are we asking such a question. Oh, my kushya. So what's the question? Dilma Beis Shammai leis lehu muktzah. Maybe Beis Shammai don't hold from the laws of muktzah. There is not, according to everyone, according to Rabbi Shimon, we know he doesn't hold by muktzah. He doesn't hold that things that you set aside cannot be used, that it's muktzah. So maybe Beis Shammai, why are you asking a question? Well, it's muktzah. How could you use it? How could Beis Shammai use it? Beis Shammai doesn't hold of muktzah. That's why he can use it. Rashi. Leis lu muktzah. Maybe they don't hold muktzah. Zok Rashi. The dilmo kira b'shimon sviraluhu. The Omar b'peirik kira. Maybe they hold like Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says in the chapter of Kira in Shabbos on page 44a, Dafam Dalam Dalaf. Over there, he's talking about a person filled up a lamp with oil, and it burned to a certain extent. The oil was used up, or he filled up a plate with oil, and the wick sucked up from some of the oil from the plate. What happens with the leftover oil? Now, the person before Shabbos, he put this oil, he's not going to use this oil for his salad or for his food. He designated that oil as burning oil, as a fuel for the lamp. But it turns out at the end that there's leftover oil. Is he allowed to use that oil for his salad, for his consumption? So according to Rabbi Shimon, he holds that Moisar Hashemen Shebener, the leftover oil which is in the lamp, the Shebekairo, or that's in the plate. So over there, Asur Divri Rabbi Yehuda, that is prohibited. Rabbi Yehuda says it's prohibited. Why? Because it's muktzah. But the Rabbi Shimon Matir, according to Rabbi Shimon, that is permissible. You can use the rest of the oil for food. After they finish burning, you can use the oil. So that means that Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold from muktzah. So why can't we say that the reason why Beis Shammai is okay with you eating the egg, because he doesn't mind that you eat this chicken has been not meant for consumption, but it's meant for raising the eggs, but he doesn't hold by muktzah, and we can still use that, just like he holds over there with regards to the leftover oil. So what's the problem? And the Gemara says, well, there's two levels of muktzah, or more levels, but there's, in this case, an oil that was there in the world. Okay, you say you designated it for the light, for fire, for fuel. Okay, but even when you designate it, there's still a possibility to use it, because you're talking about, Reb Shimon doesn't hold that you can make something muktzah if it's existence, but something that wasn't existed before, you didn't know at all that it was there, you didn't have your mind at all that you're going to get it. Meaning, how did you know there's going to be an egg over there? So this egg is like, oh, that's something totally new. So therefore, the Gemara thinks, that's why the Gemara is saying, why would Beis Shammai permit eating of the egg, even if you're going to say that Beis Shammai goes like Reb Shimon, who doesn't believe in muktzah, so we don't care that the chicken was not and the eggs were not meant to be eaten. But in this case, Reb Shimon will also agree, because the Gemara thinks, because in this case it didn't exist, so it's not possible for you to have in mind, maybe I'm going to use it. It's not even there to maybe use it. So the Gemara thinks that it should be asur. So the Gemara says, Kosalka daitin, the reason we ask the question, Afilu man dishori b'muktzah, even the one that permits muktzah, which is Rabbi Shimon, ben noilad asur, he would still prohibit in the case of noilad, which it's totally didn't have in mind. Sagt Rashi, Kosalka daitin. Rashi explains, Lahochi parchinon, maitamayu de Beishamai. This is why we asked, what is the reasoning for Beis Shammai? The Kosalka Daitin, because why do we have Beis Shammai? Because we didn't think that saying that he goes like Reb Shimon would be an answer, because we thought it entered our mind, even according to Reb Shimon, which allows when it's muktzah, but benoiled asur. But if it's been created now, even he will say it's asur. Even Rav Shimon would say it's asur. Why? The ilu b'muktzah svirale, because you can say by muktzah, Rav Shimon holds loy makzi inish medaita midi de chazile. Person does not really set aside away his mind. He doesn't remove his mind from something that is fit for him. So you said it's for the fire. Yeah, but he didn't fully, he still has a mind for it. Aval noilad, but something which has been born, it's been created now. Lo have a yoda didn't have it. He didn't know that it's going to come. He couldn't have it in mind because it wasn't in the world at that time. So maybe over there, it's not be allowed to use. So how could Shammai say that these chickens that are there to lay eggs, how could Reb Shimon say that you can use it because they're not meant to be used? So they're muktzah, and you didn't know that the egg is going to come today, so it should be muktzah. So the question is, my time I do Beis Shammai. So what's Beis Shammai's reasoning? Why does Beis Shammai say that you can eat the eggs that were laid on Yontiv when they're coming from chickens that were set aside not to be used, and you didn't know there was an egg over there? How could you use it? And the Gemara says, no. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, that was just your thought that there's a difference. But the Gemara is going to say that according to Reb Shimon, he doesn't believe in muktzah. He doesn't believe in noilad also. He doesn't go into this distinction that muktzah is permitted and noilad is also. If it's muktzah is permitted, then noilad is permitted as well. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, the answer is la'olam b'tarnagoyles ha'imedus l'kadol beitzah. Really, we're talking about a chicken that is there to raise eggs, to lay eggs. Now, the Islay Muktzah and the Rabbi Yehuda, who holds of Muktzah, Islay Noilad, he holds also Noilad. If you're allowed Muktzah, then you're allowed also Noilad. And Reb Shimon, who allows Muktzah, the leftover of the oil, will also allow Noilad. It doesn't matter, it's still okay. Well, the Leslie Muktzah, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold by Muktzah. Leslie Noilad doesn't go by Noilad. So, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Shimon. Beis Shammai go like Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't go by Muktzah. Beis Hillel, Rabbi Yehuda. Beis Hillel goes like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, this is what Rav Nachman answers. So it turns out that what is the machlokes? What is the disagreement? Shammai Beis Hillel. It's really a machlokes. Disagreement is whether muktzah is permissible, whether we go by muktzah, we don't go by muktzah. If we go by muktzah, since you didn't have in mind to eat these chickens, so then you can't use it. That's the opinion of Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, they hold we don't go by muktzah, they go like Reb Shimon, and therefore, even though it's noilad, there is no muktzah. So, according to this, it turns out that Rav Nachman is saying that Beis Hillel goes like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds a muktzah. So the Gemara asks, Umi Omar Rab Nachman Hochi. Did then Rab Nachman say so? Could we possibly say this seems to contradict the Beis Hillel ke Rabbi Yehuda? Did then Rab Nachman say that the opinion of Beis Hillel that say that you can use the egg goes like Rabbi Yehuda that holds by muktzah? That's why we can't use the egg. Sorry, take it back. We can't use the egg because we go like Rabbi Yehuda. Can't be. The Gemara is going to challenge. What's the question? So the Gemara brings down a Mishnah. But we learned in a Mishnah. Beis Shammai Oimrim. Beis Shammai say, Magbin al hashulchan atzomes uklipim. So the person had a table. He had his Shabbos table. So he ate the chicken or the meat. He leaves over the bones. Or he ate nuts, let's say, and he cracked the nuts, and he left the peels of the nuts, he left the shells, he leaves it on the table. Now, we're talking about bones that some bones that are soft or are edible for dogs or things like that, that would be a different halacha. But we're talking about he left on the table such bones which are not fit to be eaten, or he left these shells which are not eaten. So Beis Shammai says, you know what, you can pick it up. We don't worry, it's not muktzah. Even though they're not useful for anything. Anything that is useful is not muktzah because you can use it. Again, let's look inside. In the Rashi. That we can pick up from the table the bones and the shells. Magbin zokt Rashi b'Shabbos ma'al hashulchan atzomes she'einam ruyim la'achila, bones that are not fit for eating, for consumption, and klipe agoizim, and the peels of nuts. He uses specifically the peels of nuts because if you talk about the peels of an apple, for example, that's easily consumable. You know, even the peels of an orange. We're talking about something that you can't use. So now it becomes an item that is not useful. He doesn't care. He says it's not muktzah. We don't worry about muktzah. Go ahead and pick it up. And Beis Hillel says, no, you're not allowed to move the muktzah by hand directly. You can move it indirectly. Beis Hillel emrim, ein metaltalin oisom biyadayim shemuktzahim. You're not allowed to move the bones and the shells with your hands that are muktzah. How could you? But misalik as hablo kulo, you can remove the entire tray. Now a tray is a keli, it's umanara, and you shake it off. So that's how to get it off the table. You remove the tray with the things, and then you can get it off. You can't move directly the bones and the shells, but you can remove the tabla. Sheyesh toiras kli oleho. It has the status of a keli. It's a tabla, and therefore manado. And then you shake it off. So, according to the way it's written over here, Beis Hillel holds of muktzah, and Beis Shammai doesn't hold of muktzah, right? So far, this fits with our Mishnah. But Amar Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman comes and makes a commentary. He says that you have to switch around the opinions. That Beis Hillel is the one that says that you could move, and Beis Shammai is the one that says you cannot move, opposite the way it's written over here. Amar Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman comes and says, "Anu ein lanu elo Beis Shammai ki Rabbi Yehuda, u Beis Hillel ki Rabbi Shimon." We go that Beis Hillel is lenient. He goes like Rabbi Shimon. So, in other words, he wants to turn it around. And basically, that Beis Shammai is the one that doesn't allow to move it, and Beis Hillel does allow to move it because Beis Hillel goes like Reb Shimon. Let's look inside in Rashi. Reb Nachman, Onu ein lonu. We don't go b'shitas Mishnah zu in the view of this Mishnah, the way you attribute to Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Lifi shemuchlases shitosa. Because this Mishnah has it swapped. The view of Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, it mixed it up, switched it over. This is what I've heard from our teachers. The Beis Shammai ki Rabbi Yehuda, that Beis Shammai go like Rabbi Yehuda machmir, and they're machmir not to pick up the bones and the shells because they're muktzah. Or Beis Hillel ki Rabbi Shimon. Beis Hillel is like Rabbi Shimon who allows it, and you can just pick it up. so it doesn't go by muktzah. So the question is, by us, Rab Nachman explained that Beis Hillel goes by muktzah, and over there, Rab Nachman says that Beis Hillel does not go by muktzah, holds like Rab Shimon. So how could Rab Nachman contradict himself? Rab Nachman seems to contradict himself what the view of Beis Hillel is. In our Gemara, he says that we can't eat it because he says Rab Nachman because Beis Hillel go like Rabbi Yehuda. And then over there he says that we switch around the view, that according to Beitzah you can pick up the bones and the shells because he goes like Rabbi Shimon. So you have to make up your mind, who's he going like? The Gemara is going to answer now. It depends on, by us, we're talking about Yontif. And over there, we're talking about Shabbos. That's the difference between here and over there, is between whether it's Yom Tov and Shabbos.
But wouldn't you have a problem eating chicken if when you take the chicken, you know there's going to be bones. So you're like,
You what? I'm sorry?
You know there's going to be bones as you're eating the chicken. So I mean, it's like eating the nuts. The shells are muktzah after, but you're opening the shells. You're doing something with the shells up front.
Muktzah is, in other words, you're saying it's not noilad. The shells and the bones are not noilad. We know that they're going to be there, but they still have the status of muktzah because the person, since they're not useful, so therefore something which is not useful cannot be moved on Shabbos. Yeah, it has to be because not noilad, but because of the laws of muktzah, it should not be. It doesn't matter that you knew that it's going to be there. The bottom line is that right now, the nuts. We have to learn the halachas elsewhere, but in the halacha. But for now, we'll just keep it on the general. But the Gemara makes a difference between the laws of Yom Tov and the laws of Shabbos. By Yom Tov, the Gemara says we're stringent. Rab Nachman says that Rabbi Hillel is stringent, that we go by muktzah. And by Shabbos, we don't go by muktzah. The Gemara will explain, because people don't treat Yom Tov with so much strictness, seriousness as the people treat Shabbos. Shabbos, everybody knows is holy. They keep Shabbos very strongly. But Yom Tov is not so much accepted. So therefore, they were more lenient by Shabbos, and there's no muktzah, Beis Hillel, and by Yom Tov, there is muktzah. Let's look inside. Amalach Rab Nachman, so Rab Nachman. Gabi Shabbos, the Sosan Lon Tana Kerem Shimon. By Shabbos, in which the Tana wrote a stam meaning without a name, like Rav Shimon, he says with regards to Shabbat that there's no muktzah. The Tanan, where did he do this? Because in the Mishnah says, Mechatchim es hadeluyim lifnei habehema. Deluyim, the squash that has been it's been taken off the tree from before Shabbos, but you can go and cut it off so the animal can eat it. And we don't say mechatchen deluyim tlushim. I mean, they have to be detached. You can't cut squash on Shabbos, but if it's already detached, you can cut it up lifnei habehema before the rain. What's the issue? We don't say it's an unnecessary trouble. Don't don't do that because you're troubling on Shabbos. No, it's necessary so you can do it. The next halacha, you have a carcass. Now here we're talking about it died on Shabbos. So you can go ahead and cut up the carcass in front of the dogs to feed them. That means, why could you feed them the carcass? That means that we don't go by we'll go by muktzah. Let's do the Rashi. That's the carcass before the dogs. Even though that it became a nevela on Shabbos, and the animal died on Shabbos. The Bein Hashemoshes loy hoysa medes lachilas klum. At the time when Shabbos came in, when it was Bein Hashemoshes, it was not destined to be eaten for the dogs because the animal was alive. So you didn't have your mind on feeding that was not a dog food from before Shabbos, from Bein Hashemoshes, which is when the muktzah is determined. Afilu hochi, still the Mishnah said shari, that it's permissible. Why? Because the leis lon muktzah b'Shabbos, because he doesn't hold muktzah on Shabbos. That's why Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, who wrote the Mishnah, wrote it without a name, as if this is according to everybody. Hilkach magbim ala shulchan. That's why we can pick up those bones and the peels, the mighty b'Shabbos, which is talking about Shabbos, mukim lebeis Hillel. So that's why he says it's that Beis Hillel, that goes according to Beis Hillel, the name Ruki Rabbi Shimon, so that the Beis Hillel should go according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, because ki heicha the loitiksha hilchasa. So you shouldn't ask a question from one law against the other law, because when we have a Stam Mishnah, we say there's no muktzah. And according to the way we read the Mishnah, that this Hillel says that you're not allowed to pick up. So we have on Shabbos, we have a conflict, we have a contradiction from halacha to halacha. If the Rebbe paskins like Rabbi Shimon, and that's why you can cut up the carcass, even though it's muktzah, in front of the dog, because it goes like Rabbi Shimon. How could we paskin like Beis Hillel? We know the halacha is like Beis Hillel, who says that you can't take off the bones from the table. So therefore, he switches around Rav Nachman and he says, no, Beis Hillel is the one that says you could move the bones in order to fit the halacha. The kaim alone halacha is Stam Mishnah. We know the halacha is like a Stam Mishnah, which means like Rav Shimon, that we don't go by muktzah. And we have also the halacha that halacha like Beis Hillel. So we have to fit in. So therefore, we say that Beis Hillel is the one that says you could move the bones and the peels and the shells, because we don't go by muktzah because of Shim. Aval gabe Yom Tov the Ashkan is Sosum Rebbe Rabbi Yehuda. But by Yom Tov over there, Rebbe learned the Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda, Mukim lo lebeis Hillel Rabbi Shimon. So this as of Neklovim Mukim lo lebeis Hillel Rabbi Shimon. That's why he establishes it like Rabbi Shimon, because that's the Stam Mishnah. When there's a Stam Mishnah, he goes by Rabbi Shimon. However, Rabbi Yom Tov, the Sosam Montan of Rabbi Yehuda, over there, the Tana rules like Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara proves this. He goes like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, over there he rules a Stam Mishnah. When Rebbe wrote the different ways, he meant to rule the halacha. If he wrote a Mishnah without any dissenting opinion, that means he rules like that. So even though sometimes he rules like brings a dissenting opinion, but he writes the Mishnah without a dissenting opinion. That means that that's the rule. So over here, by Yom Tov, he rules, the Tana closes it up and he brings down without, like Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, Ein mevakin eitzim, you cannot split wood on Yom Tov. He says, in what is the case? So the person needs wood for, I guess, his fire. He's making a fire to cook his food on Yom Tov. So you can't split the wood. Which wood can't you split? He says, Loi min hakoiris hasduris, zu al gav zu bekarka, v'im bislebinyan. You can't use the beams that are sit one on top of the other. They're organized on the ground, and they're destined. You're going to use them for a building. That's not meant for firewood. That's meant for the building. Can't use that. The Tanan, ein mevakim eitzim min hakoiris. You cannot split the from the beams, and also not from a beam that was broken on Yom Tov, because when Shabbos was there, it wasn't there, even though now it's broken, so now you can use, but it wasn't there on Yom Tov, so you see that he prohibits muktzah. That's by Yom Tov. Even though now it's going to be standing to fire. Since during Ben Hashmoshes, when Yom Tov came in, it wasn't destined for that. Is kivon dis katzoi lebein Hashmoshes is katzoi lekulu yoyme. Once it's been not set aside, not to be used in Ben Hashmoshes, it's set aside for all day. It remains muktzah. And even though now that it's broken, you can't use it still. Alma Islim Muktzah B'Yom Tov. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda Nossi rules like this, that he goes to the Loch of Yom Tov. Hilkoch Muki Rab Nachman Lemasnisin the Heidi B'Yom Tov. So Rab Nachman turns our Mishnah that speaks B'Yom Tov. Ubesilil Ke Rabbi Yehuda, and Besilil goes like Rabbi Yehuda, that goes by Muktzah. Ubemedes Legadol Beitzah, and because the chicken is there to raise eggs, umishum muktzah, from muktzah, okay, we'll leave it over here, and we'll continue next week. Mr. Shem.
Beautiful.
Joining me,
Rabbi.
and continue.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you.